Alright, so here we're going to do a tutorial on installing Kubernetes on a NixOS operating system in Proxmox. And so the first step here is to download the ISO for installation. So you're going to download the ISO from this minimal ISO image. You're going to click here, right click it, click copy link, and you go over here to local storage or wherever you store your ISO images, but normally it'll just be local. And you'll hit download from URL, put the URL right here that you copied in the last step. For this file name, what you want to do is click here and see how it says SHA-256 there. So copy this NixOS minimal here. Okay, put this there. Then copy this checksum. Put this, you're going to select 256 here. You're going to tab over here, you're going to put the checksum there, and you're going to hit download. I already have this downloaded right here, so I'm not going to actually download it. Then what you're going to do is you're going to create the VM. So how you do that is you click create VM. I'm going to name it Nix2. I would hit start boot, and I would set a startup delay of 60 seconds. And the reason you want a startup delay is in case this VM somehow causes issues with your operating system. It'll give you some time to prevent it from loading. Okay, you're going to hit next. You're going to select that minimal image that we had. You are going to hit next. You don't have a graphics card here, so you can just hit next. I am going to give this 50 gigs of storage. Make sure you put it on the right storage. So I have a ZFS pool, and then I have local LVM, but I want it on my ZFS pool there. Yeah. Then select how many CPU cores you want. I'll put 4. I'll put a CPU limit of 6. I would drop this down to host. Next, memory. So this here is equal to like 2 gigs of memory. So I'm gonna give it like 5 gigs. I'll give it 6 gigs of memory. I think you're actually supposed to do it. Do it here. And this ballooning device means that the memory can grow if the operating system needs more. Okay, you can just leave this alone. And then start after created. Okay, there you go, and that starts it. One other thing, you can do what I just did automatically. If you follow these instructions, it will tell you how to do that. Basically, it comes down to running this command and giving it a configuration file that gives it the parameters that we just set. Those parameters look like this, as you can see. Default boot device, right? Other options, guest OS type, yeah, other options that you can set through that set of steps. You can also set through here. But I'm only setting up one VM for this Kubernetes cluster, so it's not really necessary to go through all that. Okay, so onward and upward. Here we go, Nix2. And we are in Nix, so the first thing you need to do is type sudo-i to enter a root shell here. Now what we're going to do is partition our disks for our next installation. Okay, so we're going to do that by using fdisk, and we're going to partition, right, we will need to partition this dev SDA, which is our main disk. This loop device is the ISO that we're running from. So dev SDA, and now from here you can partition your disks. If you hit M, it'll give you some help. What we need to do is set this as a GPT partition. So we're going to hit G to create a GPT partition table. Then we're going to hit N to create a new partition. It's going to ask us what partition number we want. We want it to be like 1, like SDI1. That's the default here, so we can just hit enter. We want it to be on the first sector, start at the first sector, so you can just hit enter, which is default. Our last sector, one second, we want our last sector to be 4047 so that we end up with a 1000K boot device in the beginning. So we want 4047, and then we can type P, and you'll see that we now have this partition here. And then we're going to create a new device, start at number 2, starting where our last sector ended. And we want this to be a 500 megs in size for our EFI boop folder. So we want this to be, it'll be 10.28.0.95. So 10.28.0.95. Let me just double check that. Okay, and that'll be 500 meg. Oh, I forgot to do one thing. So we need to change the type of the partitions for each of these. And so what we want to do is, you hit T there, and it'll let you change the partition, and then you select the partition number, which I want to change the first one first. And I want that to be a boot partition. As you can see here, BIOS boot is number 4. So I hit 4 here. You obviously hit Q to exit that menu, and then you hit 4 to select the partition. And now we can see this was changed to BIOS boot. Now we're going to change the second one, and we're going to say T, and it's going to select 2 for us. So we're going to do L, and we're going to want an EFI partition, which is 1. So we're going to hit 1 here and hit enter. And then we're going to hit P, and we're going to see now we have these two, and their partition types are selected correctly. Now we need to create one final one, which is our actual root disk. And so we're going to hit P again. Oh, sorry, we're going to hit N again, and it's going to select number 3 automatically. It's going to start at the last sector of SDA2, and then it's going to default to the entire disk, and I'm just going to hit enter there. Then we're going to hit T, and it's going to change the type for disk 3, and we're going to select L, and we want this to be a Linux LVM partition, so I'm going to select 44 back here. Okay, and then we're going to say P, and we're going to see that we have a Linux LVM partition that's 49.5 gigs. We have an EFI system for our boot folder, and we have a boot partition for the offset. And then we're going to hit write to write that out. And so that's all good. Okay, I'm going to clear the screen real quick. Just now we're going to move into creating an LVM volume on our SDA3. So what we're going to do is pvcreate dev SD3, SDA3. And then we see that we created that correctly. Then we're going to create a volume root for it. So vgcreate dev, I think we need vg dev SDA3, and then vgs, and we can see we created this volume group, and then we're going to create we're going to create 2 logical volumes, one for the root disk and one for swap. lvcreate. And one thing to note, I made a 50 gig disk. You probably want more than that in real life, like 500 gigs, but because this is just a sample, I'm doing a small disk. So we're going to create swap first. So lvcreate, one second, lvcreate -L for size, 8 gig. Then we're going to do -n for name, swap, and then the volume group that it's created on, and then we can see LVs, and we have one, and then we're going to create one more, lvcreate -l plus 100% free to give it the 100% of the free, and that's lowercase l, obviously over here, not uppercase. That does it in terms of sectors instead of in terms of like size. But it lets you specify 100% of the free space, so that is why we're using it like that. We're going to name this root, and then we are going to put it on the VG volume group, and then we can do LVs, and we can see that we have a 41 gig root partition and an 8 gig swap partition. Now we have to create file systems on those partitions that we just, on those logical volumes that we just created. So we are going to do mkfs. We're going to do a vfat on the swap partition, on the boot partition. mkfs vfat -n boot SDA2, I think it was, right? Yeah. Yeah, so vfat on SDA2, and then hold on. And then we're going to make swap. Actually, let's do this first. Make an ext4 file system on the root volume. Dev vg root, let's see. This is a -l. Make sure this is right, yep. Okay. And then we're gonna do we're gonna set up our swap device to be a swap device. So make swap -l swap. Okay, so now we have that set up to be a swap device. Then we're going to, let me just verify that I have this right. So mount points are not mounted yet. Find mount. Okay, well I'm pretty sure they're right. Okay, so first of all, we're gonna mount dev vg root to mount. And so the reason we're doing this, we're gonna mount what we just created into the mount folder, and then we're gonna create the NixOS installation into the mount folder. So you'll see that later, but the first step is to mount the volumes that we just created into it. So first we mount root into mount, and then we're gonna make a directory within that in the boot folder. And the reason we want our boot folder to be a separate partition is so that in case some issue happens with our root partition, we can still boot. There's also another reason to do this, like if you want to encrypt your hard disk, you need a separate boot partition that's unencrypted so you can actually boot before you unencrypt your main partition. We are not going to do that, but that is another reason to do this. You can also make your boot partition like read-only, which I may end up doing, but I'm not going to do that in this tutorial. But needless to say, it's just good to have a separate boot partition. So anyway, what we're going to do is mount our boot partition into that full directory that we just created. It's just dev sda2 into mount boot. Just confirm that that's right. Dev sda2 is the 500 meg. Make sure you use a large enough one. So this is 500 meg for the EFI system. Make sure you don't use the BIOS boot one, which is a little bit confusing. I think that's just used for something else. I think in the GPT partition table, I think is what they use it for, but I'm not really 100% sure. Okay, so now that that's all mounted, let me do swap on here. So turn the swap on here on your swap partition. Wonder if I can do like ls swap. No. Okay. Anyway. Okay, so now what you need to do is actually create your Nix configuration. So we're going to start with our default one. nixos-generate-config root, and then we're going to do mount. Okay, so now we need to alter the configuration that we just created with the Kubernetes, the parameters to install Kubernetes, which is in mount etc nixos and then config or configuration.nix. Okay, so first of all, we need to uncomment this guy here, which just says for grub to use SDA. Boot EFI support we want on because we have that EFI disk here. Let me boot EFI we want on, grub we want enabled, which we have. We want to set our time zone to America. Because America's the best, and you can't argue with me because you aren't recording. We need to set services. Let's see. Sorry. Okay, so we need to install some packages here. Yeah, here we go. Hold on. Yeah, here we go. So here we need to install some packages. I'm gonna install them wget and pkg, and k3s. Then we want to enable the SSH service. There are some other parameters that are going to go along with this. So services. Let me make sure those cows. All right, it's. root login equals weird. Oh, I just can't see it. So permit root login equals true. Services.openSSH.password authentication equals true. That might be yes. Permit root login should actually be like this. Should actually be like yes, like that. And then k3s dot enable equals true. Services. Oh, jeez. Services.k3s.role equals, I think it's server. Make sure that's right. Server. Okay. And then there's some networking that we need to enable here for the kubectl to work. So that's going to be on port 6443. Okay. Let me just make sure everything is good here. Okay, so there was a page, just so that you know where I'm getting these parameters from, there was a page here, which has been taken down, I don't know why, but which told you which parameters you needed to put in. I guess they might just be, there is also this page, which used to link to that page, so you could just use a normal, yeah, you could just use a normal Kubernetes cluster if you want to go with like officially documented things. They took this down yesterday, so I don't know why it's not there, but anyway. Okay, what I would recommend doing here is taking a snapshot before you do the next step, because it's easy to undo everything we've done so far, but it's not easy to undo the next step. So just take a snapshot here. If you're using ZFS, it should be pretty quick. So yeah, I mean, it's done. And then go back over to console. And now what you need to do, now that you've set your configuration and everything, is run nixos-install. nixos-install. And this is going to take a little bit. And I'm actually going to pause this video and let it run. Okay, so we're back. Now it's going to ask you for a password after it's done running. I'm just going to put demo in. Okay, now we can reboot. Okay, and then you'll see here we have our NixOS installation up and running here, hopefully. Okay. Demo is the password there, and then we can do kubectl. kubectl get pods. get namespaces, and then kubectl get pods and the system's namespace. YouTube name. And then these will take a little bit to create, but now you have a working installation of Kubernetes on NixOS within Proxmox. What I would also recommend doing is going in here to your snapshots. Actually, turn this off. Turn that off real quick. Huh. Okay, well, my mouse stopped working. Okay, I don't know what happened there. My mouse came back online. So I would recommend going into your snapshots here and just deleting the snapshot that you created. Remove that after you're done because you don't need to do that. You don't need that snapshot anymore after you're done, and I'm pretty sure snapshots will grow as your file system grows. So just good to kind of keep those to a minimum. If you wanted to create an actual backup instead, so you could go back to that state, you could. But once it's installed, I would actually take a backup, which you can just do like this. That's pretty easy. You do need Proxmox backup server set up for this, but that's not too hard to set up. And that is it. You have a working Kubernetes, single node Kubernetes, k3s really, cluster setup. That's it. Thank you.